Christmas Eve, 1945, a small town in Iowa. The war is over, but hundreds of German prisoners are still behind barbed wire just outside town. And on this cold December night, those same enemy soldiers are about to give the people of Algona a gift that will outlast every person in that town. A gift so powerful, it's still being displayed 80 years later. This is the story of the Algona Nativity scene, and it's one of the most beautiful examples of humanity triumphing over war that you've probably never heard of. By the end of this video, you're going to know the incredible true story of how 6 German prisoners of war spent 6 months building a masterpiece while separated from their families by an ocean and a world war. You'll discover why a U.S. Army commander not only allowed this project but actively encouraged it. And you'll understand why this half-life-sized nativity scene with 65 handcrafted figures became a symbol of reconciliation that bridges the gap between enemies and reminds us that shared faith and humanity can survive even the darkest chapters of history. If stories like this matter to you, stories that show the best of human nature even in wartime, go ahead and tap that like button. It helps others discover these forgotten pieces of history. Let's go back to 1943. World War II is raging across Europe and the Pacific. American soldiers are fighting overseas, creating massive labor shortages back home. Farms need workers, factories need hands, and the U.S. government has nearly 400,000 prisoners of war from Axis nations sitting in camps across all 48 states. These aren't just detention centers. They're part of a massive wartime labor program that would generate over $3 million in economic value while adhering to Geneva Convention standards for prisoner treatment. Camp Algona opens in April 1944 in Kossuth County, Iowa, the largest county in the state by area, located in the northernmost region bordering Minnesota. This isn't just another POW camp, it's the base camp for District 7 of the American POW system, supervising 34 branch camps spread across Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and Nebraska. At any given time, 1,700 to 2,000 German prisoners of war are housed here. Over the camp's 2-year lifespan, roughly 10,000 German POWs will pass through its gates. The town of Algona itself has about 5,500 residents. It's a tight-knit agricultural community, predominantly Scandinavian and German heritage, which creates a complicated dynamic. Many of these townspeople have relatives still in Europe. They're reading about the war in newspapers. They're getting telegrams about sons and brothers killed or missing in action. And now, just outside their town, there are hundreds of the enemy living and working. The camp is built strategically. The front section holds American administration buildings, offices for the commander, medical facilities, supply depots. The rear section contains POW barracks and quarters arranged in neat rows with designated areas for mess halls, recreation, and workshops. High fences and guard towers maintain security, but the atmosphere isn't brutal. The U.S. is making genuine efforts to follow international POW treatment standards. Here's how the labor system works. The prisoners are transported to work sites each morning, farms during planting and harvest seasons, canneries during processing season, nurseries for cultivation work, milk processing plants, even a local barrel factory. The work is hard, physical labor under the Iowa sun. But there are rules. The POWs cannot replace American workers. They can only fill labor gaps where no American workers are available. This is critical. The program is designed to supplement the workforce, not undercut American employment. The compensation system follows Geneva Convention requirements. POWs are paid for their labor. Not much, but enough. That money goes into individual accounts at the camp canteen. The canteen is like a small store where prisoners can buy cigarettes, toiletries, candy, writing paper, stamps. Small comforts that make captivity slightly more bearable. By the time Camp Algona closes, the total value of work performed by these POWs exceeds $3 million, a massive economic contribution to the wartime agricultural economy. Daily life at Camp Algona follows a routine. Morning roll call at dawn, breakfast in the mess hall, work assignments, lunch, more work, dinner. Evening activities. Some prisoners play cards, some write letters home, some attend religious services. Both Catholic and Protestant chaplains visit the camp. The prisoners are allowed to practice their faith. This will become important later. But here's what's important to understand. Beneath the routine, beneath the relative humane treatment, these men are still prisoners. They're still separated from their families by thousands of miles and an active war. They receive letters from home, when they receive them at all, that are weeks or months old. They read about cities bombed, territories lost, civilian casualties. They don't know when they'll go home. They don't know if their families are alive. They don't know if their homes are still standing. The psychological weight of that uncertainty is crushing. Some men withdraw into depression, some become bitter, some hold on to hope through faith, through camaraderie, through the belief that this nightmare will eventually end and they'll return to some version of normal life. And that brings us to Eduard Kaib. Eduard Kaib, pronounced Kaibe, is a sergeant in the German army, a non-commissioned officer. But in civilian life, he's an architect. He has an artist's eye and a craftsman's hands. When he arrives at Camp Algona in April 1944 with the first wave of prisoners, he's just another POW in a sea of gray uniforms, but he's carrying something inside him, a need to create, to build, to leave something meaningful behind. Christmas 1944 arrives. The POWs are celebrating in the mess hall, trying to recreate some sense of normalcy and tradition thousands of miles from home. They sing carols in German. They share what meager treats they've saved from canteen purchases. They exchange small handmade gifts, carved wooden figures, sketched portraits, poems written on scraps of paper. The loneliness is palpable. Every man in that room is thinking about family back in Germany, about children they haven't seen in years, about wives or mothers or fathers who might not have survived Allied bombing campaigns. Kaib decides to do something. He's an architect by training, an artist by temperament. He needs to create. So he gathers soil from the campgrounds, the same Iowa earth they walk on every day. He molds small figures with his hands, working in the evening after the day's activities are done. Each figure is crude but recognizable. Mary, Joseph, the infant Jesus, a few shepherds, maybe a wise man or two. He bakes them in the oven to harden them, timing it when the kitchen staff won't notice or won't care. And he builds a simple nativity scene, maybe 12 feet long, nothing elaborate, set up on a table in the corner of the mess hall. It's just a small display, temporary and fragile, but it serves its purpose. It reminds him and his fellow prisoners of home, of faith, of the families they can't be with. It's a connection to something bigger than their current circumstances. In that moment, looking at those simple baked soil figures, they're not prisoners. They're believers. They're fathers and brothers and sons. They're human beings holding on to hope. The day after Christmas, December 26, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Lobdell, the camp commander, is doing his routine inspection. He walks through the mess hall, and he stops. He stares at this little nativity scene created by a prisoner. And in that moment, something shifts. Lobdell calls Kaib to his office. Now, put yourself in Kaib's position for a second. You're a prisoner of war. The camp commander has summoned you. Your mind is racing through every possible worst-case scenario. What did I do wrong? Am I being punished? Am I being transferred? But Lobdell doesn't reprimand him. Instead, he asks a question that will change everything. Would you be willing to build something bigger? Something the whole town could see next Christmas? Something permanent, something meaningful, something that could serve as a bridge between the prisoners and the community? Kaib is stunned, but he's also inspired. His mind immediately starts working the way an architect's mind works, calculating space, envisioning scale, planning composition. Over the next few weeks, working in whatever spare time he has, he sketches out a vision. Not just a bigger nativity scene, but an elaborate circular display that would fill a space 40 feet wide, 33 feet deep, and 12 feet high. Half-life-sized figures, not miniatures, but substantial sculptures that people could see from a distance. 65 individual pieces carefully arranged to tell the complete Christmas story. 33 human figures representing Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus, shepherds, wise men, and townspeople. 4 angels proclaiming the birth. 38 animals, sheep, donkeys, camels, cattle, because the nativity happens in a stable surrounded by the creatures of the earth. Every figure would be individually crafted, ranging in height from 12 inches for the smallest animals to 56 inches, nearly 5 feet tall, for the adult human figures. The composition would draw the eye toward the center, toward the Holy Family, while the surrounding figures create layers of narrative. Shepherds approaching with reverence, wise men bringing gifts from afar, angels hovering above with the message of peace on earth, animals witnessing the miracle. It would be ambitious. It would be unprecedented for a POW camp project, but it would be magnificent. Lobdell looks at the proposal, and he approves it. Think about what's happening here. It's still wartime. Germany hasn't surrendered yet. That won't happen until May 1945. American soldiers are still dying in Europe. The Battle of the Bulge, one of the bloodiest battles of the war, just happened in December 1944. Families in Algona are still receiving telegrams notifying them of casualties. The emotional wounds of war are fresh and raw. And a U.S. Army commander is authorizing enemy prisoners to undertake a massive artistic project that will cost $8,000, equivalent to about $134,000 in today's money, adjusted for inflation. That funding comes from the POW canteen sales, which means it's money the prisoners themselves earned through their labor, plus possibly some local donations from townspeople who've warmed to the idea. But still, this is extraordinary. This is a commander who sees past the uniform to the humanity underneath. This is a commander who understands that art and faith can be powerful tools for healing, for building bridges, for transforming enemies into neighbors. Lobdell's decision says something profound about leadership. He could have said no. He could have dismissed the project as frivolous or inappropriate or too risky politically. What would the families of dead American soldiers think about giving German prisoners resources to build a religious monument? But Lobdell looks at the bigger picture. He sees an opportunity for reconciliation. He sees a chance to demonstrate American values, not through punishment or domination, but through allowing dignity and creativity to flourish even in captivity. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever heard this story before? Or any stories of POWs creating art during World War II? I'd love to hear what you know. And if you want more forgotten history stories like this, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting to the best part. May 1945, Germany surrenders. The war in Europe is over. But the POWs don't go home immediately. Repatriation is a massive logistical operation that will take months. And Edward Kaib? He's not sitting idle. He's about to begin the project of his lifetime. He assembles a team, 6 German POWs total, including himself. We know Kaib's name because he was the lead architect and designer. The other 5 men remain anonymous in historical records. Their names lost to time, but their work endures. These 6 men are given materials: concrete left over from camp construction projects, scrap wood, plaster, cement, paint. Everything is salvaged or repurposed. Nothing is wasted. And then they start building. This is where the story becomes almost magical in its dedication to craft. 6 months. From May to November 1945, these 6 men pour their hearts into this project. Let me walk you through what this actually involves, because when you understand the process, you understand the commitment. First, they need to create the internal structure for each figure, the armature. This is like the skeleton. For the human figures, they use wood and wire to create a frame that can support the weight of concrete and plaster. The armature has to be sturdy enough to hold hundreds of pounds of material, but flexible enough that they can position limbs, heads, and bodies in natural poses. A shepherd leaning on his staff, a wise man kneeling with a gift, Mary gazing down at the infant with maternal tenderness. Then comes the application of materials. They mix concrete, the kind left over from building barriers and foundations around the camp. They add plaster for finer details. They apply the mixture in layers, building up the form gradually. Each layer has to cure before the next can be applied. This isn't quick work. One figure might take days or even weeks to complete, depending on its size and complexity. Once the basic form is built, the real artistry begins. They carve and shape the features. Facial expressions are critical. These aren't generic figures. Each face tells part of the story. The shepherds look weathered and humble, their faces showing the hard life of working outdoors with flocks. The wise men appear regal and contemplative, bearing the wisdom of scholars who've traveled far. Mary's face radiates gentle love and awe. Joseph's face shows protective strength mixed with wonder. The details matter. Hands are shaped to hold staffs or gifts or to gesture in prayer. Clothing is sculpted with folds and draping that looks natural, as if fabric is actually hanging on the bodies. Hair and beards are textured. Every tiny element is considered. And the animals, 38 of them. Sheep with wool texture, donkeys with long ears and patient expressions, camels with their distinctive humps and noble bearing, cattle standing witness in the stable. Each animal requires the same attention to detail as the human figures. Each one adds to the richness of the scene. After the sculpting is complete, they paint. Colors are chosen carefully to bring the scene to life while maintaining a sense of reverence. Earth tones for the shepherds, rich colors for the robes of the wise men, soft pastels for the angels, natural colors for the animals, gold accents for the halos and divine elements. The paint isn't just slapped on. It's applied with the care of artists who understand that color tells part of the story. But here's what I find deeply moving. This isn't being built under duress or forced labor. Kaib, as a non-commissioned officer, a sergeant, isn't required to perform labor under Geneva Convention rules. Officers and NCOs are exempt from work requirements. The other 5 men volunteer for this project. They choose to be part of it. They're choosing to spend 6 months of their captivity, 6 months when they could be resting or playing cards or writing letters or simply waiting out their time until repatriation, creating something beautiful, creating a gift, not for themselves, but for the townspeople of Algona, the same townspeople who were initially suspicious and fearful of having enemy prisoners living just outside their town. Think about the psychology of that for a moment. You're a prisoner of war. You've been defeated. Your army has surrendered. Your country lies in ruins. You've heard reports, maybe rumors, maybe confirmed, that your hometown was bombed, that your family's home might be destroyed. You don't know what your future holds. You don't know if you'll face war crimes trials or punishment when you return home. You don't know what Germany will even look like when you get back. You could spend these months bitter, resentful, withdrawn into yourself. You could spend them angry at the enemy who defeated you, at the circumstances that brought you here, at the fate that separated you from everyone you love. Instead, you spend them creating art, creating beauty, creating a gesture of goodwill toward the people who are technically your captors. Why? One of the POWs later described the motivation this way, and this quote comes directly from the Camp Algona Historical Archive. It was a way to remember and connect to the family they could not be with back home. The nativity scene wasn't just for Algona, it was for them. A way to hold on to faith, to hold on to memory, to hold on to hope that they would someday reunite with loved ones. Every time they shaped a figure, they were thinking about their own families. Every shepherd reminded them of fathers. Every mother figure reminded them of wives or mothers or sisters back home. Every child figure reminded them of sons and daughters they hadn't seen in years. The nativity story itself is about separation and reunion. Mary and Joseph traveling far from home, shepherds leaving their flocks to witness a miracle, wise men journeying across vast distances following a star. It's a story about hope in darkness, light breaking through despair, the promise that suffering will eventually end and something beautiful will emerge. For these 6 POWs, building this scene was an act of faith, not just religious faith, but faith that their own story would also have a hopeful ending. As the months progress, word spreads through the camp and into town. The POWs are building something. Curiosity grows. Some townspeople start to see these prisoners differently, not as faceless enemies, but as men with families, with faith, with talent and dignity. November 1945. The nativity scene is complete. All 65 figures finished. The team carefully transports the pieces to a location on the edge of the camp where they can be displayed for public viewing. They install the scene with meticulous care, arranging the figures in the traditional nativity composition. Mary and Joseph hovering over the infant Jesus, shepherds approaching with reverence, wise men bearing gifts, angels proclaiming the miracle, animals gathered in the stable, every element telling the ancient Christmas story. And then they wait for Christmas Eve. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video, where I'll be diving into another incredible World War II story that most history classes skip over. December 24th, 1945. Christmas Eve. The sun sets over Algona, Iowa. Townspeople begin arriving at the POW camp. Some are curious, some are skeptical. Some come because it's become the talk of the town. You have to see what the German prisoners built. They gather, they approach the display, and they stop. They stare. They're utterly silent. Some remove their hats, some bow their heads, some have tears in their eyes. What they're seeing isn't just impressive craftsmanship, though the technical skill is undeniable. It's not just a large nativity scene, though the scale is breathtaking. What they're seeing is a profound statement. It's a gesture that transcends language, politics, nationality, and war. It's a message that says, we are not so different. We share a faith. We share a story. We share our humanity. We are mothers and fathers and brothers and sons, just like you. We believe in something greater than ourselves, just like you. We hope for peace, just like you. Historical accounts from the Algona Nativity Archive describe the townspeople as deeply moved by the unexpected gift from their enemies. Think about that word. Unexpected. They expected to see an impressive display. They didn't expect to feel what they felt. They didn't expect the emotional impact of realizing that these men they'd viewed as dangerous enemy. Soldiers were actually men, men who believed, men who created, men who gave. The archive records that the scene represented a common faith and humanity shared with the German captives living outside their town. In that moment, something powerful happens. The barrier between captors and captives begins to melt. Not completely. The war is too recent, the wounds too fresh, but it starts. These aren't just enemy soldiers anymore. These are men. Men who love their families. Men who believe in something greater than themselves. Men who, despite everything, chose to create beauty and offer it freely as a gift of gratitude and peace. One observer noted that the scene became an enduring symbol of unity for the people of Algona. Think about that phrase, unity. In December 1945, just months after the war ended, with grief still raw and victory still being celebrated, a nativity scene built by German prisoners becomes a symbol of unity for an American town. Not a symbol of conquest, not a symbol of victory or defeat, a symbol of unity, of shared humanity, of the possibility that reconciliation can happen even after terrible conflict. February 1946. Camp Algona closes. The remaining POWs are finally repatriated to Germany. Before they leave, they formally donate the nativity scene to the town of Algona. It's a gift, no strings attached. A thank you for the treatment they received, for the humanity they were shown, for the opportunity to create something meaningful during their captivity. WWII returns to Germany. His fate after that is unknown. Did he rebuild his architectural practice? Did he reunite with family? Did he ever know that his creation would still be displayed 80 years later? We don't have those answers, but his legacy speaks for itself. The nativity scene is initially placed in the custody of the Algona JCs. Eventually, it comes under the care of the Men's Club of the First United Methodist Church in Algona. And here's the beautiful part. Every single year since 1946, the Algona nativity scene is displayed at Christmas time. Every year, for nearly 8 decades, the figures have been carefully maintained. Some have been restored, but the scene continues to fulfill its original purpose, reminding people of faith, of peace, of the possibility of reconciliation even after terrible conflict. In December 2022, the story was immortalized in an independent film called Silent Night in Algona. The story had become so important to the community that filmmakers decided it needed to be preserved on screen. And now, through that film and through ongoing efforts by local historians and the Camp Algona POW Museum, the story is reaching new audiences. I've linked a resource in the description where you can learn more about the Algona nativity scene, see photos of the original figures, and even plan a visit if you're ever in Iowa during the Christmas season. Check it out if you want to dive deeper into this story. But here's what makes this story even more powerful. It's not an isolated incident. The Algona nativity scene is part of a broader phenomenon of POWs creating lasting art during World War II. Let me tell you about the Italian chapel in Orkney, Scotland. Between 1943 and 1945, Italian prisoners of war were held on the Orkney Islands. They were put to work building barriers to protect the British naval base. But in their spare time, using 2 Nissen huts, those corrugated metal structures, they built a chapel. Not a simple chapel, an ornate, beautiful chapel with painted frescoes, a detailed altar, wrought ironwork, and architectural flourishes that rival much older churches. That chapel is still standing. It's still used for worship today. It's become a major tourist attraction and a symbol of peace. There's also the Peter Maritzburg Italian POW Church in South Africa. Similar story. Italian prisoners of war building something beautiful and lasting in a place far from home. Why did this happen? Why did POWs across different camps, different countries, different circumstances choose to create art? I think it's because art is an assertion of humanity. When you're stripped of freedom, of autonomy, of control over your own life, creating something is an act of defiance, not against your captors, but against despair. It's saying, I am still here. I still have value. I can still contribute something meaningful to the world. And in many cases, like the Algona Nativity, it's also a bridge, a way to connect with the local community, a way to say, see me as a person, not just an enemy. The Algona Nativity scene represents all of that, but it also represents something specific to its time and place. Algona had a large German heritage population. Many residents had cultural ties to Germany. The choice to build a nativity scene, a Christian symbol central to Christmas celebrations in both American and German cultures, was strategic. It found common ground. It emphasized shared faith over divided nations, and it worked. The people of Algona embraced the gift. They preserved it. They display it every year. They tell the story to their children and grandchildren. The nativity scene that was supposed to be a one-time gesture became a permanent fixture in the community's identity. Know someone who loves history? Or someone who needs a reminder that humanity can shine through even in wartime? Share this video with them. Let's do a quick recap. You now know the story of WWII, a German sergeant and architect who was held at Camp Algona, Iowa during World War II. In December 1944, he built a small nativity scene in the mess hall. The camp commander, Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Lobdell, saw it and commissioned a much larger project for Christmas 1945. Over 6 months, from May to November, Kaib and 5 other POW artisans handcrafted 65 half-life-sized figures made from concrete, plaster, and repurposed materials at a cost of $8,000. On Christmas Eve, 1945, the nativity scene was unveiled to the public. The townspeople of Algona were deeply moved by this unexpected gift from the German prisoners. The scene became a symbol of shared faith and humanity that transcended the divide between captors and captives. When Camp Algona closed in February 1946, the POWs donated the nativity scene to the town, and for nearly 80 years, it has been displayed every Christmas season in Algona, maintained by the Men's Club of the First United Methodist Church. You started this video with a question. What could enemy prisoners give their captors? You now understand that the answer is something far more valuable than any material gift. They gave a reminder that even in war, humanity endures. That faith can be shared across battlefields. That beauty can emerge from captivity. That reconciliation is possible. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The Algona nativity scene isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a challenge. It challenges us to see our perceived enemies as human beings. It challenges us to find common ground even in divided times. It challenges us to create beauty and meaning even when circumstances seem impossible. Edward Kaib could have spent those 6 months bitter and broken. Instead, he built something that outlasted the war, outlasted the camp, outlasted his own life, and continues to speak to new generations. That's the power of choosing creation over destruction. That's the power of choosing connection over division. If you want more stories like this, forgotten moments of history that reveal the best of human nature, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. In my next video, I'm going to tell you about another incredible World War II story involving art, survival, and the lengths people will go to preserve beauty in the midst of chaos. You're not going to want to miss it. And here's my challenge to you. This Christmas season, think about the Algona Nativity scene. Think about those 6 German prisoners who chose to give rather than resent. Think about what you can create, what bridge you can build, what gesture of goodwill you can offer, even in difficult circumstances. Because if they could do it in a POW camp during a world war, imagine what you can do. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.